The strength of a nation comes from the businesses that it owns. And today, the Ummah is very weak. So what kind of businesses do we need? Well, the Ummah doesn't need another marriage app or another burger joint, and we definitely don't need another online TikTok store selling abayas. And what the last few years have shown us viscerally is that Muslims are completely dependent on huge businesses that we don't own, and we don't share their values, but we are completely beholden to them. Our payments, our charity runs on their payment rails. Our food comes from their factories. Our data, all of the things on our phones live on their servers. And when you don't own the system, when you don't own these critical businesses, you don't just get excluded, you get controlled. For me, this is really personal. Back in 2016, I left a well-paying job in the city to start a business for Muslims. And I did it because I realized we can't keep waiting for others, mainstream asset managers, to build what our community needs. And there's still so much work to do. So in this video, I will share the 5 businesses that could change everything for our Ummah. And at the end, I'll share with you how you can help build them. Every Muslim business today, from charities to online stores, run on rails, owned by companies like Stripe, PayPal, and Visa. And that works until it doesn't. We've seen donation links frozen, business accounts suddenly shut down, and transfers delayed for extra verification. The reason? Usually, vague phrases are given like violating acceptable use policy or risk-related activity. In reality, many of these shutdowns happen because people have names similar to those on sanction lists, or because they've sent money to countries deemed high risk, even if it's for legitimate humanitarian or business purposes. According to data from Launch Good, Muslim businesses and non-profits are 167% more likely to face challenges while banking compared to the general public. And Launch Good themselves have had to switch providers multiple times over the last decade. And all of that is because of the places that they're sending the money to and the charitable work that they're doing. And in 2022 alone, I've personally been approached by many people trying to send charity to Palestine and asking for advice on the best way to navigate that in such a way that their accounts don't get shut down and their money actually reaches the place that they should get to. And why are we having this conversation in 2025? There is an entire country that has been razed to the ground, and we are so weak that forget actually getting there and helping them out, we aren't even able to send them money so they can help themselves. That's how weak we are. And in 2022 alone, the estimated loss to Muslim businesses from blocked accounts and failed transactions was over $20 billion. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's control. When you don't own the pipes that money flows through, someone else decides when and whether your community gets to use them. Just simple example, if we have an enemy, would we give them the keys to the water pipes that are coming into our house? The essential thing that we need every single day, would we give the keys over to people who hate us? Doesn't make any sense. But that is exactly the situation that we're in. What we need as an ummah are now Muslim-built or Muslim-sympathetic payment alternatives, ethical, transparent, and censorship-resistant, control-resistant, for all of us to be able to easily use. I think there's really promising opportunities by exploring the decentralized finance, crypto, DeFi space to be able to come up with some alternatives from that ecosystem. And the opportunity here is huge. You've got millions of legitimate Muslim individuals and businesses being excluded from the global financial system, a massive underserved market that's only growing every single year. Whoever builds an inclusive payment infrastructure for this audience isn't just solving a moral problem, they're unlocking a global business opportunity that could one day stand toe-to-toe with people like Stripe and PayPal. It's not just about payment gateways like Stripe and PayPal. The real power lies even further under the surface, in the banking rails, in the banking systems themselves. Every online payment, international transfer, or bank deposit ultimately flows through a small number of systems built, owned, and governed by Western institutions. So if we think about it from a food perspective. It's not just the corner shop, but it's the wholesaler they buy from. This is the banks of the world. So that means if you build your own Muslim PayPal, you're still ultimately going to be relying on someone else's infrastructure to move the money around. And when those systems decide a country or an organization or a cause is high risk or persona non grata, you're cut off, not just for a few days, but indefinitely. You can see entire countries, their billions and billions of pounds are frozen. Sometimes they are confiscated and then used for whatever other purposes that they would like to use. There are multiple countries like this, and sometimes there are very good reasons to embargo or sanction bad actors. But often what we find is that these steps are taken for political reasons. And so if we want to be safe from that, then we need to think of alternatives. We've seen entire Muslim charities frozen out of the global banking networks, and some Islamic banks have been unable to send or receive money internationally simply because of the compliance fears or geopolitics. We have a situation in the UK where many Muslim charities are persona non grata with Islamic banks simply because how deeply fearful they are of being able to deal with the level of risk that comes with. This is the situation that we are finding ourselves in today, folks. That's how deep this problem runs. It's not just about who processes your payments, it's about who permits them at the back end as well. What the Ummah needs isn't just Muslim fintechs, it's Muslim banking infrastructure and actually Muslim-owned banks. In the UK, for example, in pretty much every country, there's about 5 or 6 clearing banks. They're the guys who really own the keys, and actually all banks ultimately will go through them. We need to get to that level of infrastructure and actually even go beyond that. And we need to start thinking about how cross-border settlement systems should be set up, particularly between Muslim countries. Regional payment networks independent of US-controlled rails like SWIFT, and partnerships with Islamic banks to create a new global liquidity route. These are massive projects, but they start small with a vision. A fintech that connects 2 Muslim-majority countries, a clearing network for Islamic charities, a consortium of Islamic banks creating shared rails for trade and investment. Because the truth is, until we control the rails, we're just painting over someone else's system, and we'll always be one policy change away from being shut out. The next business area is something that really worries me, especially as someone who's worked in finance for years. Because when it comes to insurance, most Muslims are completely unprotected. Not because they can't afford it, but because they don't trust it. Insurance is actually one of the few areas where we've taken a minority view from an Islamic perspective that some modern models can be permissible completely. But you should watch this video properly to hear our arguments fully. Even then, there are still valid concerns by how most conventional insurance operates, so the hesitation isn't baseless. The result, though, is the same. Most Muslims avoid insurance altogether, leaving families, homes, and businesses completely exposed. And more important than that, there is the critical role that insurance plays in being able to underwrite some of the risk in new and emerging areas of the economy. And if those risks are not underwritten, then it actually stifles innovation. So if I give an example of the shipping industry is fundamental for so much commerce that happens. But until the invention of shipping insurance took place, people were not that keen to do shipping because it was such a risky endeavor. But once you have insurance, it made it much more likely to happen, and that today is the bedrock of our economy. And so similarly, if Muslims are unable to use a critical financial tool that actually unlocks so much progress, then we are always going to be playing catch up. But there is actually an Islamic alternative to insurance called takaful or cooperative insurance, which is a risk-sharing system where members contribute to a common pool that used to support anyone in the group who suffers a loss. And crucially, any surplus belongs to the participants, not to the shareholders. But while takaful is established in some places like Malaysia, the UAE, Indonesia, in many regions it's still non-existent. That's a huge gap and a huge opportunity, because insurance isn't just a financial product, it's protection. It's what keeps families afloat after tragedy, keeps businesses alive after accidents, and keeps communities resilient when things go wrong. It's the enabler of innovation, as we've talked about. What we need are modern, fully fledged halal alternatives built for today's Muslim consumer. Imagine a digital first thaqafal product where you can sign up in minutes, see exactly where your money goes, and share in that surplus when the community stays safe. The opportunity here is enormous. Overall penetration rates in Muslim majority countries typically range between 1 to 4%, which is significantly lower than the global average of about 7% and much lower than mature markets like the US or UK, which is around 11 or 12%. Whoever builds a trusted, modern and scalable halal insurance brand won't just fill a market gap, they'll protect millions. They'll redefine what financial security looks like for Muslims, and they'll fulfill one of the key objectives of the Sharia, which is the preserving of wealth. The next one might surprise you, because when it comes to halal food, most of us probably think, yeah, we've got this one sorted. You can walk into almost any city in the world today and find halal restaurants, halal butchers, halal logos on supermarket shelves. But when you look behind the scenes, the picture changes completely. Many of the products we eat, from meat and snacks to packaged foods and frozen meals, aren't actually owned, produced or distributed by Muslims. In other words, Muslims are the primary consumers of the halal stuff, but not the main producers. And when we don't own the process, when we don't own the supply chain, we don't control even the definition. Standards vary from country to country. Some certification bodies are credible and rigorous, others are purely commercial. In certain markets, halal has become more of a marketing badge than a religious trust. And why would it be other than that? Because they don't share the same religion as us. Meanwhile, the global food industry is worth well over $1 trillion and growing fast. And yet most of that value still flows out of the Muslims' hands and into those countries that provide it. That's a huge gap and a huge opportunity. What we need are Muslim-owned, vertically integrated halal food brands that can compete at scale, controlling the entire journey from farm to shelf. The last one is the most urgent and maybe the least understood. Everyone's talking about AI right now, ChatGPT, Sora, all of these new tools, but most of these are built, again, by non-Muslims, with some of the creators outright hostile to us. And many Muslims are just building wrappers around someone else's technology. We are building on top of the foundations we don't own. In fact, we're supporting it and we're contributing in to those foundations simply by the fact that we're using their products. The real power in AI arguably isn't in the apps, it's in the infrastructure, the models, the data, the memory systems they're trained on. That's what decides how the world sees truth, what content gets censored, and whose values get baked into the algorithms shaping our lives. So while we're busy making AI tools for X, others are shaping how our very language, our faith, our worldviews are represented globally or erased. If you ask today's leading AI models questions about Islam, Arabic history, or even basic moral issues, answers are often inaccurate, biased, or incomplete. And that's not by accident. It's because we're not part of the data and we're not part of the design. This isn't just about being late to the next big tech wave, which is also true. It's about who defines the future, who controls that narrative. If everything is now going to be going through 2 or 3 key nodes, 2 or 3 key pipes, and we don't own those pipes, then the flavoring of that water will be whoever does own those pipes. But there's a massive opportunity here. If we build at the right layer, we don't need more chatbots. We need Muslim-built AI infrastructure. Go deeper and deeper into the back end. Data sets grounded in accurate knowledge and linguistic diversity. AI memory systems that preserve our history and sources faithfully. But it's not just about that. We need to create such powerful systems, such quality product, that everyone wants to use it regardless of their background. Because once you've got that, then you can actually do exactly what other companies are doing, but now you are doing it with ethical frameworks that prioritize fairness, that prioritize privacy, that prioritize transparency, and that share a worldview that we are fundamentally comfortable with. Because if we don't build it, we'll keep getting shaped by systems that were never built for us. But if we do invest in data, infrastructure, and ethics, we can have a real seat at the table when the next chapter of technology is written. Every one of us has a role to play, and it starts with one of these 3 simple things. First, Use your skills. If you've got experience in tech, finance, design, data, operations, anything, find people already working in these spaces and offer to help. Or if you've got the drive to start something yourself, look for co-founders with complementary skill sets and start building. Second, fund the builders. If you're an investor or even just someone with savings looking to support real impact, back the founders building in these areas. If you're one of those founders and you're looking for funding, reach out to us at Curate Capital. There are also amazing community groups like Alif and Deen Developers and Islamic Makers who are supporting early stage Muslim entrepreneurs. And thirdly, the one thing that absolutely everyone can do who's watching this is use these products. When a halal business or app or product launches, use them. Every click, every subscription, every investment, every recommendation helps these businesses grow and attract more support. Don't ask them for discounts, pay full price, or even give them more than they ask for. That's real support. We've experienced this firsthand in our journey building Curate Capital. We've had customers who supported us even when things weren't perfect. We've had investors who've been generous with their time, their trust, and their capital. And we've had people like you who've watched, liked, and shared, or simply believed in what we're trying to build and championed us from the very start. This right here is our unfair advantage as an ummah. The fact that we're bound together by something deeper than money or metrics, that across languages, races, and continents, there are Muslims willing to help and share and uplift one another, even if they don't speak each other's words. We don't use that enough. But if we did, if we really backed each other, there's no limit to what we could build together. I'd love to know what other businesses you think the ummah needs. Please ping me them in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.